It was hard not to watch or listen to the impeachment trial this week, but if you did and found yourself turning it off, don't feel bad. Even the media treated it like an obligation rather than news.
If you tuned into one of the evening news broadcasts this week, they made sure you knew there was sexier news to follow.
Coronavirus, the Harvey Weinstein rape trial, the growing scandal for the Grammys, crackdown for emotional support animals.
Oh, then this lead story.
The impeachment trial of President Trump.
The networks cut in and out of the impeachment trial this week, mostly out. A far cry from the coverage of President Clinton's impeachment in the late 90s.
It was a constitutional civics lesson and tawdry daytime soap opera all in one.
Indeed, it was, as President Clinton's failure was a matter of lying under oath about an affair.
And of course, the young White House intern, Monica Lewinsky.
Salaciousness aside, that networks and cables went wall to wall. Not so this time around.
We will dip in and out, but we're not going to torture you.
And the Fox Morning team wants you to know they did you a favor.
We watched so that you don't have to watch the entire thing.
Thanks, guys. But if the United States Senate would only allow us to see what our senators are doing during the trial, maybe we might want to watch.
There's some sketch artists in the room who are actually drawing some pictures of what senators are doing, including senators who are sleeping.
Now that I'd like to see.
Yeah. I have to say, I really don't have any major criticisms of how the media did this week. I mean, MSNBC, CNN basically continued with it, especially at night. Fox did not. I don't feel like the government or anybody else should be forcing them to carry proceedings like this. If they want to, that's fine. It's a business decision. We all know that. I can't fault them for that. You heard it on NPR, certainly heard it on WGBH 89.7. You could get it on C-SPAN. There were plenty. You could get it streaming. You could get it in many. And then I thought a lot of the daytime or evening news wrap-ups were fine. I did get a kick out of some of those teasers because that one with Lester Holt did went a minute and a half. You wanted to make sure, don't go away, folks. Stick around for Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah. When you try to compare what's happening now to decades ago, it's a little difficult because back then we didn't have, as you pointed out, all of these different avenues by which we could consume this kind of information. You had the main network news operations or the networks themselves that carried this kind of programming. If you didn't see it there, it was hard to catch it somewhere else. Now there are so many different areas through the streaming or just monitoring it on your phone that it really doesn't raise it to the level that you have to go live with it at the moment. If there was more action, then I think that's the kind of thing that you could make the argument for running it.
Yeah, and even go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Well, it is, as you say, Emily. It is being covered live in multiple outlets. It's not the Watergate hearings where there were only 3 major networks and they felt an obligation to cover it. So I think that you have a choice, and I don't really have a problem with that. My problem, to raise a complaint I've made before, is that for those of us who work for a living, and I would love to see an hour of highlights every night, and nobody's really giving it to me.
That's because it's still live.
Well, I understand. Have the highlights up to that point, and then tomorrow have the next highlights. I think that would be a real public service.
Interesting. I think this all speaks to the way people consume media these days. You're right. There's not a lot of action, thanks also to the restrictions Mitch McConnell put on what Senate TV could show. But I read somewhere recently that major networks that have paid billions of dollars for the rights to live sports are starting to be concerned about the way people consume sports. Increasingly, fans are not necessarily going to sit there for 3 hours and watch the game. They'll click on YouTube later for the highlights package, just like you're asking for, Dan. So, it's an acknowledgement of the reality of the way people are taking in info these days.
So the highlights package that I've been interested in are what CNN and MSNBC have been doing at night. So, and I have to say, Brian Williams' show has been pretty good at picking out some of the things and allowing some of his analysts to go to some of the bigger moments from the daytime, particularly. Now, of course, you weigh those analysts, and they are very clear about where they're coming from in terms of their interpretation of some of the events. But nonetheless, you get some very clear sections of it, and that makes a difference. I managed to sit down at the moment that Hakeem Jeffries was speaking and caught him making the Biggie reference.
smiles.
So that was
That was the highlight, actually.
I sat there saying, I'm not sure is that right? I mean, I was so startled.
That's hilarious.
But other than that, you know.
All right. The only thing I have to
catch
moan
it.
about is CNN had a bug up, a super it said breaking news through the entire proceeding.
Oh,
Yeah,
my God.
no.
Yeah.
No, come
Well,
on.
I guess if it's live,
Yeah.
it's breaking.
No.